Hi, welcome back to Deep Images. Halloween 2024 has ended, but we still have an enormous amount of material left over from our Halloween sessions. So I'd like to share one today with you, a symposium that we did on the film Return of the Living Dead by Dan O'Bannon. This was co-hosted by myself and Rhiannon Clark, and Rhiannon presented Return of the Living Dead as her choice for a zombie film to discuss in great detail. And we think it can stand on its own as a very special symposium episode. We hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it.
Okay, I have Return of the Living Dead. That's what I have for us.
Awesome.
Exciting, a cult classic. Yes. Uh, yes, Return of the Living Dead, 1985 by Dan O'Bannon directed this movie. Yes. And so basically the movie starts off, the events portrayed in this film are all true. The names are real, of real people and of real organizations. And that is a really, really cool and fun way, even though it's a big lie. And my on the spectrum part of myself, like, how could you lie like that? But no, it was just to bring people into the world, into the story. I
Yeah, the,
think it
the
makes
whole the
things
whole
really.
conceit of it is that it's a real story
Mhm.
behind, you know, famous fictional story. So, but I'll let you.
Night of the Living Dead. Yes,
Specifically,
indeed.
yes. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So basically, it says that caption that it's all true, and then it goes. It's set at a medical supply company, uh, like this really cool building. I love the architecture in this movie, Return of the Living Dead. I absolutely love the architecture. So the you need a supply. The catchphrase is "You need it, we got it." So you know, there's this big factory full of medical supplies and sort of dead animals and yeah, all sorts of half dogs, split dogs, all sorts of creatures in this
And
medical supply
butterflies. Yeah.
and butterflies. Beautiful. And yes, so it's July the 3rd, 1984, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And it's really beautifully set in the daylight, so it starts in the daytime. Um, but this movie is going to get increasingly more dark. So it's really beautiful that it starts off in the daytime.
Hmm.
I appreciate that. And so we go in and we see this man called Frank. He's the man he's kind of the man who knows everything about the medical supply, uh, uh, about the medical supply company. He knows everything. He's been there for a long time, and he's training in this new employee, Freddie, this young guy, basically. And James Karen plays Frank, and I know that he's been in quite a vast array of really cool movies. I can't think of them on the top of my head. Do you remember the
One of
movies
the
he's
later
been
ones he did, well, he had a small part in Mulholland Drive, actually.
in?
That's one
Hmm.
of the last movies he did I can think of before he passed
But
away.
he's got a great face
Oh
anyway.
yeah.
I think James Karen has a great face and he's really into it. So
Oh,
he's
he's great.
really hamming it up in this movie,
Yeah.
you know? He's really in it. He's not half. He doesn't have one foot in, one foot out with this movie. He's all in. Yeah. So it's so yeah, he shows Freddie around and he says, "Here's the split dogs. Here's where we keep the cadavers." And Freddie's like, "How many of these cadavers do you have?" And he's like, "Well, you got to keep the inventory fresh." So basically, uh, this guy Frank's been around dead. dead people and dead animals for so many years that he has a really strange sense of humor,
Yeah.
like a dark sense of humor. That's what I get the impression that he's literally, yeah, he's got a dark sense of humor. He says when Freddy's looking at the dead body for the first time, he's like in shock. And Frank is like, look alive.
Oh God.
Yeah. And yeah.
Poor Frank.
So I know. Yeah. But so then it shoots over to these punks, these 80s punks. So we're going over and there's about I think there's three ladies and three guys or whatever, and they're talking about they're like, I like death with sex. And they're just saying like really edgy shit to each other, and they're like, yeah, and their clothes are so cool. I feel like they're so alive. That's the thing about punks. There's something so alive about punks. It's like they're living adrenaline.
Like, so that group's got like a a couple of nerds. Like a man, one of the boys and girls are kind of nerds, and then then there's the two that are kind of the new wavy kind. Then you've got the two that are like the hardcore punks, with the leather and the
Yeah,
crazy
yeah,
names.
yeah, indeed, yeah. So yeah, like there's like Spider, yeah, Spider and Trash, and
Suicide.
Suicide and Trash are together. But yeah,
Yeah.
uh, Trash, she's got kind of sort of red short hair. I think she's really beautiful. I really love the style. I really love Trash's style
Oh
in the
yeah,
movie
yeah.
or whatever, gorgeous. Like that's like for me, like I'm not into conventional beauty. I think that
Me neither.
people like dressing interestingly is actually quite beautiful to me.
Oh
People
yeah.
who make an effort, you know, to do something different with themselves. I appreciate that.
Oh, she's a
Uh,
sexy woman. That actress Linnea Quigley, she went on to be a big scream queen in a lot of B movie, quote unquote B movies. But this is really still her most famous role, and I really think this was when even though she's mainly been had long blonde hair since then, I actually think she looks the best in this movie. And I think it is
with
the
the
only movie.
short hair.
Yeah, I think it is the only movie, spoilers, where she is like completely naked.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Though she's
Yeah,
topless in many movies.
she does a tombstone dance, a dance on a tombstone, indeed. A sexy tombstone dance,
Classic scene.
indeed. But yeah, they're talking to each other in an edgy fashion. They're like, fuck up and die type
Society.
thing. Fuck society. I think Tina says, Freddie knows where the party is at. I think because Tina is the sort of really sort of innocent,
Yeah,
kind of more demure lady of the group,
right.
shall we say. And I think she looks a bit like a lady called Alice Lowe, who's in a TV show, an English comic horror TV show called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. And if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's really funny. But I think they have a real, like,
Her,
similar face.
her name is I'm friends with her on Facebook, the woman who plays
Beverly Randolph.
Beverly Randolph. Yeah, yeah, I know her on Facebook. I've never really interacted much with her. I want to mention that other girl who's kind of the new wave girl now, that Jules Shepard, she also went on to become a big scream queen. She was really young in this though, but no nudity from her in this movie. Sorry guys, you have to watch some of her other movies.
Yeah. I didn't so much lock on to her as the character so much. I don't know why.
There's not a lot
Can
to
you?
her character now. She just makes a few wisecracks to the nerdy guy.
Yeah.
Because the nerdy guy's trying to, get her and, you know, not having much luck.
Yeah. But I don't know. He reminds me of a sort of a vanilla Crispin Glover, if that makes sense.
Right.
If that
Well,
makes
well
sense.
said. Yes, it does.
But yeah, so Frank and Freddie, it's like I think it goes, yeah, Frank and Freddie, it goes basically, it keeps hopping back. The movie keeps hopping back between Frank and Freddie in the supply medical supply center, and the kids, the punks, and wherever they're going, if they're going to go to a party or wherever they're going. But the energy, so it's kind of interestingly paced the way it keeps hopping back between the different gangs. But yeah,
Well, it's
Frank
kind
and
of and
Fred.
it's kind of realistic, you know. It's like these punk
Yeah,
guys hang out with this innocent girl, but her boyfriend works at a medical supply next to a cemetery, so they think that's cool. So of course, it's
yeah,
check it out, man. You know, kill two birds with one stone.
indeed. But yeah, so we're going into the sort of like the origin of things. So Frank tells Freddie, "Have you ever seen Night of the Living Dead?" Basically, and so as you mentioned, Henry, it's kind of meta to mention another horror film within a horror film. So,
Right.
so Frank mentions Night of the Living Dead. Have you ever seen it? Well, it's based on a real case. Like, wait, basically, the army, um, they uh, they leak this chemical called trioxin 5 or 2,2,4,5 or something,
Hmm.
I think it's called,
Hmm.
and it turns people into zombies. And so they effed up and they sent some bodies to the medical supply center. And that's when Frank or tells Freddie that they have zombies down in the basement, but they're in this special sealed container,
He's not supposed to
basically.
tell anybody that.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's special, top secret. It's super top secret.
The impression I got
So,
was that you know when first of all the implication is that instead of in Pittsburgh as it was shot and set, that Night of the Living Dead took place in Louisville, Kentucky, and that uh it's not just the rednecks beating down all of the zombies. That toward the end, actually, the government comes in and grabs the zombies because you actually can't completely eliminate them like you think in Night of the Living Dead. So that's why they put them in these canisters, right?
oh yeah, to protect them. But then it was really kind of funny because Frank just bashes the canister. It's like, ah, are you sure? They're like, ah, it's sturdy. And
He's
are
being
you sure
funny,
these
yeah.
things are okay? Or they're sturdy. And then Frank just bashes the canister and is like, oops. And then it gets completely sprayed with all of the trioxin 5 or whatever. And it just comes out of the canister and they're like coughing and spluttering. And then it goes into this really cool intro with the music then that like where it does the credits at the start but kind of after a really long period of a
Yeah, the
setup.
prologue is pretty long, but well worth
Yeah,
waiting. Yeah.
it's a big setup. But then yeah, it's like the music is dun, 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 dun,
Has a good
dun, dun,
soundtrack.
dun. Really exciting, energetic music. Like you really get into it. It's like I feel like I'm a punk when I'm listening to this
Oh
music.
yeah.
You know?
It's such a time capsule.
Ah, yeah, no, like I mean, punks, they're very evocative. So, like, you know, when we talk about them, they bring up such imagery and stuff and such energy, and they're very alive in this movie, which is
Yeah.
hilarious because a lot of them become undead.
Oh yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Right.
When the trioxin goes through a pipe and it actually reanimates a corpse during the really exciting music intro. So we see the corpse being animated because it like goes up a vent, up a pipe.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. One wakes up
So
and
yeah, one wakes up, all right, this is how the like we're building up here. We're building up here, you know.
mhm.
This movie gets increasingly more chaotic as time goes on. That's what I love, the pace of the movie. It
Mhm.
just keeps getting chaotic.
Good.
But yes, so it brings us to the general in the army's house, and he's like super rude to his wife, and he just like comes home to his wife, and she's like trying really hard to please him, and like her makeup is perfect, her dress is perfect, dinner is perfect, and he's like, you know, just being really rude, and in a really weird way, you could say he's a zombie. He's kind of a zombie. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like that.
He's a
That's what I kind
bureaucrat.
of got.
That's
Mm.
just that he just follows orders. I mean, he's like numb. You know, that's why he can do what he later does. Okay.
Yeah, indeed. He's as cold as ice, willing to sacrifice, let's say.
Which foreigner was
Yeah.
they? What?
Yeah. But yeah, so the seven well-dressed punks head to the medical supply building in a car, and the suicide is in the car now. All of a sudden, this dude, and he's got like a big chain from his nose to his ear or whatever, and he's like hardcore. He's the really hardcore one. He's the punkiest punk next to Trash. He's pretty punky as well. That's why I think they're drawn to each other.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so they head to the medical supply building, and they go. I think Trash says, "I like it. It's a statement." So like, which is something that punks love. They love making a statement, like what they're
Yes.
wearing.
Right.
Want to shock you. They that's the energy. I want to like jar people. They're sort of like wake people up out of their slumber with their attitude and their clothes and everything. But then anyway, they head to the cemetery afterwards, and they go, oh, that's a cool building, but let's go to the cemetery because like they're on an adventure, and why not? Looks
Yes.
cool.
Young goths
Let's
in there.
go. Let's go. Well, yeah, I love gothic imagery myself also. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think there's sort of gothic mixed with punk in this film, which is really
Gothic
cool. I
was
love
called in
everything.
America. Gothic was called death rock. It wasn't called goth back then.
No
Goth,
way, it's
the
called
goth
Death
turn
Rock.
started in Britain, but it didn't migrate to America. Like for when I first heard Sisters of Mercy, it was '87. It was still called death rock. It wasn't called goth.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Fascinating.
Nice
I'm
one.
so old.
Yeah, well, I'm appreciating the education.
First
So
death
that's
rock band was Christian Death, who are American. I'll keep
go on.
that death rock thought in mind because actually one of the bands in a key scene is of the same scene that Christian Death came from.
Oh, cool. Right. Wow.
I'll
I
tell
love
you
it.
when you get to it. Yeah.
Look, everything is connected. This is
Oh
why we're
yeah.
friends.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the whole that's one of the big themes of what we're doing.
Hmm. So, yeah, Frank and Freddie, meanwhile, find the half dog barking on its side, barking like, and I don't know how they did it, like the half dog barking, and the butterflies are alive, and just
That's
everything's
incredible.
coming alive.
This is
And it's
brilliant.
an amazing scene, actually amazing. I'm in awe. It's like magic the way they're doing everything, you
Hmm.
know?
When the
Um,
dog starts barking and they hit it, and it whimpers. I laugh my ass off every time. I know that's kind of morbid, but I just can't stop it.
but that's how you know you love horror movies. You know what I mean? I was going to say that earlier. I'm laughing at the things you were saying in the other movie, Messiah of Evil.
Yeah,
I was laughing. I was like, that's how you know you enjoy horror movies because you're laughing. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
because you're making light of it or making fun of it. It's joy.
Yeah. Joy of the magic, joy of the absurdity of it all.
Hmm.
There is comedy in horror, and there's a lot of comedy in Return of the Living Dead. I found that
Oh yeah.
everybody in the cast was really enjoying in the movie that they're in, and I could tell that they were all having a laugh making the movie.
Mm.
But yeah, so they, uh, oh yeah, so like basically Freddie like starts cursing because he's in shock. And then Frank is saying, mind your tongue if you want to keep your job. It's like seriously, like saying something bureaucratic, basically, in a time of madness, which is so jarring and
It's
contrasting and
absurd.
kind
Yeah.
of it's really absurd. Keep like, mind your tongue. It's kind of hilarious. Yeah. And so basically, Frank rings Bert, he's the main owner of the medical supply
He's a
place.
character too.
Yeah, he's pretty cool dude. And he talks like he's like in a 1940s. I think he sounds like he's in a
Yeah.
1940s noir. He has that sort of kind of style to his voice or whatever. But
That actor, Clu Gulager, he's not old enough to have been in the original Dwarves, but he was in a lot of those kind of roles in the late '60s and '70s, where he had that kind of Robert Stack, like kind of stolid, kind of voice, like, yeah, okay, man, and but it's he plays as just such comedic effect in this. He's
Yeah,
so incredible in it.
this is what we're gonna do. See,
Right, exactly.
this is what we're gonna do. But yeah, real man on the
Hmm.
case, on
Hmm.
it, solid man. But so Frank rings Bert and is kind of like, Bert, we have a little problem. That when everything starts coming alive or whatever. Meanwhile, cut to grave scene, uh, graveyard where Trash, the punk lady, what's the actress's name again? Beautiful
Linnea
actress,
Quigley.
Linnea Quigley, beautiful. And so she gets up on the gravestone, on the tombstone, and just super confident. I think she just has uh, leg warmers on. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. She's just wearing leg warmers and she's just like literally liberatingly, freely, you know, expressing herself. And I think after she comes down off the tombstone, Tina is like, okay, it's over, like put some clothes on. And then Trash is like, what? Are you getting hot or something? Is it like, is this upsetting you or something? I can't remember what she said. But that's the kind of vibe of what she was saying. She was kind of like, if you've got a problem, it's your problem.
And then
I'm
she
confident with
confesses
my
her
body.
her fantasy to them.
Hmm. Oh yeah, at the start of that, before that, she's like,
She sounds like the total uber goth when she says that stuff.
yeah, she says that her fantasy is of like the worst way to die is like a load of old men eating her alive or something. Like,
And she
wow.
just has that, like, just eating me alive, man.
Eating me alive. Yeah, she's really intense. So yeah, so really enjoyed that scene. Trash, a great character, really beautiful, like really draws you in. She draws you in.
I want to tell you a
And then
funny behind the scenes thing.
mhm,
It's very explicit anecdote.
go for it. Yeah, why
I'll
not?
try to say it tastefully. Some people watching might know it, might not. But on the audio commentary of the movie, so Linnea did literally strip completely naked except for the leg warmers, right? And she had shaved and didn't have any pubic hair. Okay, and this is way before that was popular. That wasn't fashionable in the 80s. Um, so and she really did dance around. So they put like this little flesh colored plastic thing just right on top of her vulva so that when she danced you wouldn't see them. But you see everything, you know, up to it and behind it, but you don't quite see that,
Yeah.
because it's just covered, but barely. So it's one of those you might think you see it, but you're not sure. But that was a nice thing the director did for her, but I don't think she cared
Yeah.
either way.
To protect her modesty, but she looked quite confident in her nudity,
Oh yeah, oh
which
yeah. That's
which is beautiful to see.
mhm.
And yeah, it's very liberating, to see confident nudity in such a way.
Mhm.
Somebody obviously embracing their body in a way like she knows she's kind of a sort of punk goddess, and that's what comes across, the punk goddess vibe.
And they're dancing
So
around
yeah.
that one song is like, I want to make love till
Oh
I
yeah.
die
Oh
tonight or
yeah, the
something.
soundtrack is fantastic. Yeah, well, it's a really cool track that she's dancing to, but I can't remember the name of the track that she's dancing to, but it's
It's something like
incredible.
that. She wants to dance, makes love till she dies, or dance, whatever. But I don't know the artist. I forgot.
Yeah. Like all I remember is that when she comes down off the tombstone, then there's a character called not called Suicide, who's the really hardcore punk, and he's having a sort of punk existential crisis, and he's kind of like, man, I really live this, man. This is who I am. This is how I feel. Everybody's taking the piss out of this, but I
This is
really
not a
live it.
costume.
This is not a costume, he says, and Trash is coming up and like getting all like sexy with him and dancing up on him. And like, I'm really digging this seriousness of you right now. And he's just so in it, like in his goth sort of like punk existential crisis, sort of like really seriously in his vibe that he doesn't even care. Yeah.
So he rebuffs her, and then but tell us where things escalate. So like, doesn't Bert come to the place
Oh yeah.
to help Frank and Freddie? And then
Uh,
we end up meeting the other major cast member, and I'm trying to remember when he comes in, uh, played by Don Calfa.
oh yeah. So basically, they call up this guy called Ernie, who is
Hmm.
a mortuary. He's a mortician, and we cut to Ernie, and it's kind of hilarious. It's like Bert and Ernie.
Right.
That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what came first. Did Sesame Street, Bert and Ernie
Oh,
come
Sesame
first?
Street came first. Yeah.
Okay, well, okay. I loved Sesame Street as a kid. I really did. Snuffleupagus was my favorite.
So Ernie is on the hook.
Yeah. So basically, Ernie is they're just casual as you like, just like prepping this body or whatever. And they come in, they decide to oh yeah. So they've literally the corpse has come alive and they've gone crazy and they've had to literally knock the block off the corpse that was reanimated, and it's kind of comical, like I'm laughing here, and they've got like a hatchet in the head, and then they go to saw the head off or whatever.
Yeah,
They're
the
trying to see
buzzsaw
what will
electric.
kill. They're trying to see what would kill a zombie, this zombie. They're like, this is we're way over our heads here. How do you kill a
See,
zombie?
I think they assume, well, Frank, no, thinks, I think he thinks maybe that like if you smash their brain or their head or shoot them like in Night of the Living Dead, it will kill them. But they found out that's actually not true in this case. The reality, you can't kill them that way because they're all their all their all their matter is alive. Like all their body parts are alive. It's
Indeed. So
insane.
even when they chop them up, even when they chop all the little bits, the zombie into bits and pieces, we see that the head is going. And again, magic. How do they have the head going and then the body going? And do you
Yeah,
know what I
they're
mean?
all.
Just incredible, incredible animation or whatever.
Well,
And
it's
so
kind
they
of like
chop.
Reanimator because, like,
Yeah.
they explored this in Reanimator, but especially in Bride of Reanimator when he just starts uh messing with like limbs and bringing them just the limbs to life and then fusing them with other body parts. Pretty gross, but I mean, it's really
But
messy.
also magical in a
Yeah,
really
yeah,
weird way.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
exciting.
mhm.
Which kind of makes you the weird mad scientist when you're actually wanting to go in along the journey with these people or whatever, and the fascination. Like everybody, you get sucked into the zombie world or whatever. So they chop up all of the bits and pieces and they put them into little bags, black sacks, and they bring all the black sacks to Ernie, basically. And they make a joke and they say that it's ferrets or weasels, dead weasels or something in the bag. And he's
Rabbit
like, that's
weasel too.
illegal. Rabid weasels, that's illegal. It's like, we've got some piece, like dead animal, or these animals we want you to kill or whatever. Um, but he's like, that's illegal. But then they, Frank opens one of the bags and like an arm comes out and grabs Ernie. And it's like, again, it's hilarious. So he realizes, okay, we have a problem here. Houston, we have a problem. And so they put all of the little bags of all the bits of the zombie into the crematorium fire, and then when they burn the bits and pieces of the zombie, the gas is released out into the air, into the night sky, which is full of rainy, stormy, rainy sky. So that all of this toxins go into the air, into the rain. Trioxin 5 goes into the rain, and then it showers down on everybody. It showers down into the morgue. So basically, all of that trioxin 5 is going down into the roots of the graves,
Yeah.
and then also and on to the teenagers as well. And so yeah.
I don't think it affects
Um,
them though. I don't
I
think
don't know if it affects them
you
yet.
never,
No,
none of them ever, spoiler, none of them ever turn.
not all, none of them, but like one of the, some of them turn, but one of them
Well,
turns in a
after they're,
particular way.
yeah, right. Um, but yes,
Mhm.
and that's when you have the classic shot with the little guy comes up and he's just a skeleton with eyes, but he's alive.
Oh,
I guess he's got a brain in there. And
we,
that's when they start playing Do You Want to Party? Party Time is the song I was talking about. Grave 45 Grave was a goth death rock band. Like I think they were also from the West Coast, like Christian Death, and they did songs that were a little more pop, a little more melodic, and this is their biggest song because of this movie, really.
Mhm.
So it's party time and all the zombies are coming out.
Oh yeah, so everybody is in the they're still in the
Cemetery.
thank you. Thank you. Like my brain is starting to rot. Brain rot from one joke. So no, the cemetery, they're all in the cemetery and then they go off to try and find Freddie
Mhm.
because they see something weird happening over uh at the chemical plant. They weird things are happening. I think that it's raining and stuff.
Now the
Uh
rain does burn trash.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Mentions that burns her skin.
oh yeah, it burns her skin, and they
She's
all get
naked.
into the car or whatever. Yeah, they're naked. You keep saying she's naked. We get it. She's
Well, that's
naked.
what's so crazy. But I mean, it's just so like she just stays naked. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, but she's so comfortable in her skin
yeah,
that her
sure.
skin is her clothes, as far as I'm
But I
concerned.
think that's what's
You
bad
know,
when the rain hits her and it kind of like, oh fuck. It's like,
yeah, that's true. But it's like, yeah, I suppose, you could say, where's your parents? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you have any self-care or for yourself? You know what I mean?
they're
Uh,
rebels, man. They don't need anybody.
yeah, yeah. Well, I I I understand. In my 20s, I was the same way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
So yeah, so they are trying to find Freddie, which I guess was, the character, I forgot her name, that Beverly Randolph plays. That's her boyfriend. So that's her main objective for even going there, you know.
So Tina goes
Mhm.
over. Oh yeah, so zombies actually rise up from the grave at that point,
Hmm.
and I think yeah, Tina wander, and they all jump into the car, but Tina wanders over to the medical supply warehouse to find uh, a zombie hungry for her brains. That's it. Yeah, and I can't
That's
remember the name of the zombie. That's
that
it.
character is
It's
called Tarman, not in the movie, but on the credits and in the materials. Yeah, by fans. Yeah, he's called Tarman.
he's really cool. I love how they've made him up. He's
Oh, and
super
he's
creepy.
Finley like a scarecrow kind of. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
excellent.
and like sort of like yeah, like tarry, sort of slimy, sort of yeah, kind of vibe.
Hmm.
And he
They used
actually
that. They
eats.
used him in the ads for the movie. I mean, the movie was, too gory to show much in the TV ads, but they did show him going more brains, and that became like a kind of a catchphrase.
But he actually then he eats suicide's brains. Like he
Hmm.
crunches into his skull. But I don't know why I found it so satisfying. I was like, that I'm such a monster. I feel like I'm a monster watching this movie when I'm watching it. So like I
Well, by
found
that
that,
time you're kind of sick of suicide, but it still surprised me the first time I saw it. And
yeah.
I was like, okay, well, they're just going to get right into it.
Yeah, so let's go. Crunch
Maybe
into his
nobody's going to get
crunchy
out of
skull.
here alive. We don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just satisfying anyway. But when they all go to find Tina. Oh yeah, the medical staff come. Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
medical staff
they test
actually
them.
come. Yeah, test them like Freddie and Frank. Basically, they're shivering and free, and Tina is like cuddling this really sick Freddie, and I'm
Yeah,
like, get off of him! Stop cuddling this zombie! Like
they don't
he's,
know he's a
you
zombie.
know,
Yeah, But the,
They
the
don't know he's a zombie.
but those guys figure it out and they don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, but
And
like,
then,
you can tell that there was no such thing as COVID-19 at this time because
mm.
nobody who'd ever lived through anything like COVID-19 would be cuddling their loved ones
Oh
after
right, no,
that
no.
ill.
Or
I
there
know.
wasn't Ebola or SARS, any of that by then. But
I know.
yeah, I
Not at
mean,
all.
but that's just it. Is the paramedics they quickly understand what's happening. I mean, it doesn't make sense to them
Mhm.
scientifically, but they can't deny that and of course that's freaking Freddy the fuck out. Like, what are you saying about me, man?
What do you mean? What do you mean I don't have a pulse?
Room temperature. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, he's freaking out. But you know what I mean? You do feel for him. You feel for Freddy turning into a zombie because he's scared. Because like most people, even though they're adults or whatever, if they're faced with something extremely scary, they will turn into children.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and you can see like a little boy in
Yep.
Tina's arms, and kind of cute, and
Yep.
he's very vulnerable. Um, but yeah, it's like, and then it cuts to that tune. It's party time as the zombies turn trash into a zombie. Basically, they turn her.
To fulfill her fantasy.
Yeah, they do actually. Yeah, indeed. um,
But as you pointed out, yeah, she may have ended up turning into one anyway because yes, she got the rain on her skin. The others didn't. So
she, she did get the rain on her skin, but I also think she probably manifested it too because she
she
was
doesn't
really intense.
she doesn't suffer. We later learn she doesn't really suffer from the bites all that much. I mean, she doesn't get like devoured totally.
No, no. Okay, we can say this because she actually turns into a really hot zombie.
Right.
Like like a zombie you would.
It's just her face is so crazy looking. But
A
she's still like
zombie you
got the
would.
naked
She's
body.
gorgeous. She's stunning. She's stunning.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Walking down the road and then she meets like a I think she meets a homeless person and that's her first meal. Her first brains. But yeah, it's a very iconic scene when she rises up as a zombie.
I think there was a punk band called The Accused that had a mascot like that called Martha Splatterhead. She had kind of a monstrous face and like a sexy body, and she was on all their album covers. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the paramedics get killed. They get chomped. They get eaten.
But then they call more paramedics, and
They get eaten. uh,
well, it's funny
but
because
yeah,
then then you really start to realize the zombies. Some of the zombies are more sentient than others, and once they're getting these people in there, and the guys like they kill them, and then the zombie picks up their radio and says, "Send more paramedics," you know,
yeah.
and
I
they
want more brains.
right, we're still hungry, and you know, Bert and them are watching some of this through the window, and they're like, "No, no," they're realizing that the zombies are deliberately bringing these people there, and they're all walking into this trap, you know. They can't do anything about it, because
They're
they're
quite clever, these zombies.
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
But yeah, the punks anyway, like the punks that are there, I think Tina, Spider, and the Mohawk lady, and um, Bert and Ernie, they're all locked in a house, and the punks just want to know, like, what is this chemical? They basically they're talking to Freddie and to Bert, and they're just like basically like getting really punk with them and saying
Well, it's
like,
mainly
what's
Spider.
actually
You can tell
happening?
Spider's the most intelligent of all of them. The punk.
Yeah, yeah,
He's the black
Spider.
guy who looks kind of like a gang member, and he's like actually wanting to know what the fuck does this mean, man? Explain this to me.
Mhm.
What are we gonna do? Like, he doesn't, it's not a
Yeah,
joke anymore. It's like,
no, this shit is real.
and I like the fact they
Yeah.
made him kind of a hero along with Bert and Ernie. That was cool.
I liked the team spirit that they had going on.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
It was very hearty, like you know what I mean. They're really helping each other, like they're coming together when, as these zombies are all like, surrounding them in this house, and like literally boarding the place up, and there's zombies everywhere, and it's really tense.
Yeah. A lot
Um,
of energy.
but I just want to say this one scene, and I'll leave it at this scene. But I just want to talk about the scene where they take this torso of a zombie and bring that torso of a zombie up onto the mortician's table, and they strap the zombie down, and she has kind of long flowing pink
Yeah.
hair.
What's her
And so
body up
when
to the torso?
yeah, it's her body just torso up
Yeah.
basically.
Like
And
her spinal, the bend of her spinal is sticking out. Her spine is sticking out
spinal cord. Yeah,
and
indeed. And it's
wiggling.
animated. It's animated. Ooh.
Wild effect.
And yeah, it's so cool. And they tie her up. Ernie asks, can you hear me? And she says, yes. and and then Ernie says, why do you eat people? And she says, not people, brains. And then and basically he says, but why? And he says, why? The pain of being dead. And then she says, I can feel myself rot.
Hmm.
It makes the pain go away. And you can totally just feel for her. And it's kind of like in a really weird way. I don't know, but I've observed heroin addicts, okay? And I really feel like it comes across like in a similar way for me, because a lot of heroin addicts are heroin addicts because they're actually um trying to like numb sort of emotional pain from trauma.
Hmm.
So uh, in an unusual way, we're getting in there with that. But just you feel for this zombie, and it's a really poetic and sort of poignant moment, like feeling for this really.
I like Ernie's reaction, because he's like,
What was his
who
reaction?
knows? It hurts being dead,
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. It hurts being dead. And he's like, oh, that makes lots of sense. So basically, we get to realize that these zombies are looking for brains because it just kind of gives them that feeling of relief for like about 15 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, it's a fix.
Like, and then they're on to the next brain.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, I'm not going to say any more about it because I want everybody to go and see this film, and I want everybody to enjoy it just as much as I did and to get into it. And
Cool. I'm glad you
yeah,
enjoyed it.
it was a great vibe.
It was
Yeah.
it's yeah, I saw it on the TV in the late 80s. It was a little cut, some of the gore, but um I remember the ads and I knew it was a comedy, but also knew it was rated R. And I thought the Tar Man looked kind of fucked up. I mean, I thought More Brains was funny, but I was still squeamish about gore back then. So it wasn't a movie I would have seen in the theater when it came out. I wouldn't have been old enough to see it by myself anyway, but when it came on TV, there was a station here for a while that played a lot of movies and they didn't cut them very much. They bleeped out a little language and like fogged some nudity. That's where I first saw Reanimator. They would play it pretty frequently, and then I played Return of the Living Dead, and I loved it. And then I rented it in like '92, and finally saw it like completely uncut, and it's
So
been a
did they fog trash? Did they fog trash?
yeah.
Did they fog her nudity?
Yeah,
Oh.
they fogged it and they just cut a few shots or quick shots. Um,
Oh
so it was nice seeing it uncut, but not just for that. But yeah,
well.
I've loved it ever since. Yeah, I've got the Blu-ray and it's got like tons of, if everybody wants to look for this movie and don't not outside, I don't know where it's streaming, but if you want to, I would recommend buying it. It's pretty cheap. It's a Blu-ray by Shout Factory and it's got like 5,000 million extras. It's just everything you want to know about this movie. So some of these little asides that I threw out are things I learned from having that disc and the bonus features and stuff.
Nice. I love any of the extra information that you have because it just, it adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah, we were
That's nice.
talking before we started recording, and I mean, probably a lot of people watching this might know this, may not, but Dan O'Bannon directed this and wrote this, but and he really rewrote. It's based on a novel, Return of the Living Dead, which was written by John Russo. he wrote his own sequel to Night of the Living. Like the movie came out, and then him and Romero were kind of like starting to feud over the rights, and then he went ahead and Rousseau wrote the novel Night of the Living Dead. And The Night of the Living Dead itself is based on a short story written solely by Romero called Night of Anubis, which is itself a riff on I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, except he changed the vampires to ghouls, which they later called zombies. And they never call them zombies in Night of the Living Dead, they call them ghouls. But Night of Anubis is a really cool short story. It doesn't have Ben like as the main hero, but it really atmospheric, and that's kind of what him and Rousseau built the screenplay around it. But of course, Rousseau's one of these guys. He took all the credit. Like I wrote Night of the Living Dead. It's like compare all the movies that Rousseau made after they split up and his writing, and compare them to Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead that Romero wrote. No, Romero wrote Night of the Living Dead. I mean, there's not an accident that Rousseau never wrote another brilliant script after that, and Romero did. It's kind of like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the comics. Stan Lee never did anything interesting after Jack Kirby left, but Jack Kirby kept writing crazy stuff until he died. It's an offend the comics guys out there, but it's the way it is. But he Rousseau wrote the novel, and then I don't think it did real well, but it's like a kind of a collector's item. And then he wrote a sequel, and I haven't read the sequel. And but from what I understand, once it was optioned for a number of years, it took until after Dawn of the Dead had been made for the Return of the Living Dead option to go through. And so by this time, Romero and him are going completely different directions. But when Dan O'Bannon took the novel, and rewrote it, that's when he made it like a meta thing. So some people have made a diagram of zombie movies. I just want to say this real quick since we're covering this is the last time we cover zombie movies. I can't remember. I downloaded it on my own computer. I don't have it anymore. I could probably search it out. But some fans made like a chart of how all the zombie movies tie into each other, either in continuity or thematically in any conceivable way. So, the root is Night of the Living Dead. That's like the top of the pyramid. So then you have like the children are Dawn of the Dead and Return of the Living Dead. They're parallel sequels. They're both direct sequels, but they take place in alternate universes. So, totally different. And then Return of the Living Dead had three more sequels. I've seen the second and third. And second, in the second one, uh James Karen and the other guy, Matthews, who played Freddy, they're in it too, but they play totally different characters, and it's not a good movie. I'm just gonna say it. It has its fans, but I didn't watch it for years because everybody in the horror I knew hated it, and when I watched it, I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. Um, but by that time, I'd already seen Return of the Living Dead 3. Now, Return of the Living Dead 3 was directed by Brian Yuzna, who produced Reanimator and directed a lot of those movies, that him and Stuart Gordon worked on. So Return of the Living Dead 3 is a much more darker, sleazier, gorier movie
Hmm.
than the first two. It's much better than the second. I can't say it's as good as the first, but it is a distinctive movie. You could enjoy it on its own terms, but there is a continuity. I mean, they do explain how the main character Julie, who becomes like a zombie, a sentient zombie, uh, how the trioxin, yeah, how her and her boyfriend encountered the trioxin, and she's become kind of an iconic character. She's wearing like black leather, and like her shirt's ripped and her breasts are sticking out, but she's got like these spikes through her nipples. Because one thing she does in the movie to stop the pain of being dead is self-mutilation. So it was very even
Okay.
more of its time. It's the 90s. And she has these barbs on her hands and these spikes on her head. I knew an artist from Atlanta named Jeff Pittarelli. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not, but many years ago he sold me a print he had that he had drawn of her. It was beautiful, and I think I did end up selling it at some point. But I had it for many years. So she's kind of what's the actress's name? Melinda Clark. I don't think she's done anything of note. She was in Spawn, but that's probably been only a big role. But Melinda Clark was Julie, and so Julie is kind of a horror icon herself now. From Return of the Living Dead 3, 4. I didn't bother. It's one of those in name only, I think. And I think there might be a five. One of them's called like Rave of the Dead. I think it's set at a rave. I just had no interest
Right.
in this
Yeah,
movies.
that's hilarious.
And then
Mm.
Romero has Dawn of the Dead and then Day of the Dead, which we just covered on here. And then years later, he did Land of the Dead, which takes place in the same universe. And then a few years after that, he did Diary of the Dead, which takes place in the same universe, but it's from a different vantage point. It takes place earlier, closer to right after Night of the Living Dead. And so he kind of created his own parallel sequels. And then that had a sequel called Survival of the Dead. So uh that's the last one he made. He never had the money to make Twilight of the Dead because that was supposed to be the big budget one. That was the original script that became Dawn of the Dead. But as time went on, he thought, well, I'll get funding. And by the time 2000s came, the zombie thing was starting to blow up, but Romero was only getting attention because of that. He still wasn't making a huge amount of money. And he'd made other classic movies like Creepshow and Martin, and it's really sad how he was treated by the industry because he was totally independent. So, he
Yeah.
made one studio movie, The Dark Half, which I personally thought was shit, but and then he made another
Well,
studio movie.
one thing I learned, he might not have had self-worth, I mean, the thing is sometimes
Well, he
people
is
don't.
a very modest guy.
Oh,
He was a
yeah,
very
but to be fair, you kind of need to kind of like know your worth yourself,
he wasn't
before other people
aggressive.
know your worth,
Yeah. He didn't like the
basically.
business part of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, he couldn't
I
swim.
know, I know.
Yeah, he couldn't
I
swim
get
with the
that.
sharks. He and people would be like, "Oh, George, you created a genre." He's like, "Well, yeah, yeah." Okay." He was
Really
always
humble
modest.
about it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And then basically he made a lot of other people like Robert Kirkman super rich. Basically
like
being
a
best.
horror angel. He's a horror angel.
Yeah, and but when he did Land of the Dead, he by that time he did have some support. It wasn't a studio movie, but he had a lot of more investors, and he managed to get like a couple of names in it. Like he got Ossie Argento, Dennis Hopper, John Leguizamo. They all played in it, and they were happy to be in it. Him and Dennis Hopper have been friends since the '60s because Dennis Hopper started as an actor, but he became probably arguably the most important independent filmmaker of the 60s with Easy Rider, which was made for nothing and made millions and changed like everything about American cinema. And so it was cool to see Dennis Hopper. And in that movie, he's satirizing the modern day, which was then like the turn of the millennium, just the way he'd been satirizing his culture in the 70s and 80s in Dawn and Day. So a lot of people don't like Land of the Dead, and I like it. It's definitely not in the league of the others, but I think it was his attempt to make it compromise. And since he had more of a budget, he still had great practical effects. People working with him, some of the same, but he did start using CGI in order to create the depth of the wounds.
Oh
So it
wow,
really
okay.
looked like, three-dimensional. Like if somebody's part of somebody's heads off, you can do that stuff in CGI. That's one thing I like about CGI. You can make people, missing a limb and it looks real. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of how that all went on. And then the other branches, Lucio Fulci made Zombie 2 because in Italy, Dawn of the Dead is zombie, what's called zombie. So they made Zombie 2 in Italy. So to Italians, they're thinking, oh, this is going to be a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. And because Dario Argento helped produce Dawn of the Dead, and he got Goblin to do the music for it. Um,
Love Goblin.
yeah, and that's one of the most iconic soundtracks. And so, they got Lucio Fulci to do Zombie 2, and Zombie 2 has nothing to do with Dawn of the Dead. And Bill also reviewed that in this series. And I mean, I would like to say, maybe don't want to sound pretentious, but for serious fans like myself, we call it zombie. We don't call it zombie. In Britain, everybody still calls it zombie flesh eaters to this day, I've noticed. Like in England, everybody in England, it's like zombie flesh eaters. I'm like, it's not called zombie flesh eaters. That hasn't been on a box in 20 years, but they just got so used to it because of the video nasties and the controversy. And it's not called Zombie 2. That's the proper title, but it's zombie. So it's kind of its own thing, but it kind of follows another thread, and then it had sequels, which increasingly had nothing to do with it. And we also reviewed one of those in this series. Justin reviewed Zombie 4 After Death. So we tried to kind of cover all the angles of this, like the classics and then some of the more obscure ones. So this is our attempt to wrap it up, and this is a good one to wrap it up on, the one you're doing here. Really excellent choice.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Suffice to say, the army gets called in at the end to to help out.
yeah. They have to make one of those choices. The government has to make
Mm,
one of those choices,
yeah.
which backfires, of course. But we
Pun intended.
we don't see all the consequences, but we know that, oh no, now it's like she's gonna get worse. Because how do you get rid of this
Hmm.
chemical once it's seeped into the atmosphere, and blown through the atmosphere, like nuclear winter, I mean, then you're
Hmm.
fucked. That's what was
Indeed.
disappointing. That's what was disappointing about the sequel, the Return of the Living Dead 2, is it was a sequel, but it was also kind of like a remake almost, and it was more comedic, but it wasn't funny, but it was goofy. And it didn't explore what happened at the end of the first one. It didn't pick up there. It kind of like backtracked and then had the same actors playing different characters to try to give it
It's
legitimacy.
confusing.
Dan O'Bannon didn't have anything to do with it, neither did
Oh,
Russo.
disowned it.
Yeah, it was just the studio had it, and they're like, we're gonna make a sequel. It made a lot of money. So, but yeah, I would recommend people check out Return of the Living Dead 3 because it is if you want to see a darker, not non-comedic and very punk rock, like very of the 90s, like filled with angst and, body piercings and shit, then that's the movie. But all right, we're gonna wrap up here, and I want to thank everybody for watching the zombie series. And coming up is Demons, Devils, and Black Magic, and we hope you'll enjoy those too. And as always, you know what to do. Brianna's gonna tell you what you should do for us
Well,
because you love us.
we'd love it. You know, why wouldn't you like, subscribe, and share? Uh, because we're having a great time, and let's share the great time we're having with other people as well.
That
So,
sounds good. So thank you for joining us. Have a good night. All
good
right.
night.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.